Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello Dan, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Great. I'm great, thank you very much. How are you?
I couldn't be better, man. Couldn't be better. Looks like we just got Haas in here as well. That's good.
I believe Nilesh
How are
also.
you, Haas?
I'm doing well. I'm running around like a maniac because my flight's in a few hours. So I'm like, it's
Oh, that's right. That's right.
time to mount here, but you know, yeah, yeah. So I'm like last minute doing some stuff around the house, and then yesterday, my freaking sink decided to like not work and get clogged up and then leak, and I was dealing with that. My wife and I were dealing with that all night, and then
Oh man,
yeah,
sounds like it's just been a comedy of errors. I mean, with Nico's having clutch problems.
it's
You know,
crazy. I was like, wow, perfect timing.
how's
We
everything across the pond with you guys?
will make it worth your time before you catch that
That's
plane, definitely.
awesome.
But
Hey, are
everything
you
is
guys
good.
going to East Denver by chance?
No, we're not actually going. We're going to the Paris Blockchain Week next month, but not to
Oh,
East
that's right.
Denver. Will
That'll
you
be
guys be
awesome.
there?
Yes, we will. Haas and I both will be in Denver.
Okay, great, great. I know a lot of colleagues that are actually going. It's going to be massive this year, I believe.
Well, this is what the fifth year so far, and it looks like. I mean, I looked at the list of attendees, and it's just you're right. It's going to be enormous.
Yeah, everyone told me like all the events I've ever been to, they're like, you need to go to East Denver because I've never been to one yet. So this will be the first time. And I mean, I'm not even staying for like the whole entire thing. You know, it's so long. It starts the 24th, so tomorrow basically, and then it lasts till I mean, they even have after events till March 9th, I think. So it's like the longest.
That's right.
It's crazy how long this thing is.
You need to put like to take vacation to go there, basically.
That's
I
right.
know. I'm going for 5 days. You know, most events are 2 to 3 days. I'm going for five, and it's still like it's like I'm not even
Well,
going to
come
be
on,
there.
Haas. Let's be honest here. You're going to be doing a little bit more than just blockchain stuff out
Oh yeah, looking forward to it. Although it's so nice here today, it's like record setting. It's like 70. I think it's 71 or so right
there.
now
Yeah,
where I'm at.
it's amazing.
And then when I land in Denver, it's supposed to be like minus like 6 or something like that. So it's like
Wait, are you serious?
yeah, it's like an 80-degree difference, but it's
Oh,
crazy.
Jesus.
Which
That's
is like
huge.
so drastic, right? You know, but I looked all week. It's supposed to be in like the 50s and sunny, so that's not bad. Just really cold at night though, like down to the 20s and stuff like that. But it'll be all right.
That's going to be painful.
And
You keep
people listening probably are like, "What are these? What are these guys talking about with their American temperatures?"
you keep people inside talking about blockchain tech. That's perfect. That's smart, actually. Uh, guys, just one point. Could we make Nilesh a speaker? I think in the chat.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can find them. Can you have them raise their hand? I am having trouble finding them.
Yes, Nilesh, if you, I believe you hear us right now. If you can raise the hand, he will make you a speaker. In the group that we have also, he sent you the his ID on Twitter.
Okay, let me go see if I can find that.
I'll tag you here. So, guys, congratulations for the partnership. I just saw today. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It was we've been talking about it a lot behind the scenes, and so it's good to finally have that news out and uh, in the ether. It's gonna be a big deal for us, I think.
I just push him the messages right now.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you guys are ready, I don't know what I guess Nico's is having issues still, but you know, like I guess today is just going to be more about like who you guys are. You know, I typically like to ask about the how this all started. Usually, you know, you find someone, you're like, look, this is what we need to do, or this is an issue with the space. We need to, do this. Like what we're doing, we figured out, there's a necessary need for what we're building out. And typically every team has some sort of solution to a problem that exists. So I guess whenever you guys want to roll with it, go ahead.
Definitely. I think Nilesh just joined us, and he actually started in 2015. He's here. He'll be the one able to tell you that story, basically.
Hi guys. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
I might be sounding like a scratched record. I have a sore throat, but I think the day has not been great for either of us.
You sound good. Hey, Nico, is you there? See if he's here yet.
I am here, but you'll probably struggle to hear me because I'm travelling after my car broke down, and I'm getting signal coming in and out, guys. So I'll leave it in your capable hands, and if I can join in, I'll be here.
All right, Niles. Yeah, you got the mic's yours. Just like I guess, just introduce yourself. Let's just do that. Let's go around and introduce one another. So if you want to do that, please.
Okay, I'll go first. So I have been in this space for the decentralized space since almost 2015, and we'll talk about it a bit later. But as my domain and background, I have worked primarily for a payment network like Mastercard. So I have been with Mastercard doing payment processing for a long time. Then I worked with banks like Barclays. So most of my experience has been in the mobile, whether it's telecom, mobile money, or payment space. And yeah, I mean, along with this great team, we started thinking of this project since first time I chatted about it was 2015, and here we are, still at it. So that is a bit about me. I'm currently based in Ireland, Dublin. um, I'm Indian, so I used to be in India, but uh, needed to be near my team. So Ireland was a kind of a good destination.
How long have you been in Ireland for?
It's been about 4 months now.
How are you enjoying? Are you enjoying it?
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. The people are really friendly, and if you love Guinness, then I think it's the best place to be.
Ireland is an absolutely beautiful country. We should get you connected with Michael, actually, one of our team
I
members.
I know, I know. I was on the the Twitter Spaces when you guys were there, and I heard the accent, and I asked Victor, "Is that guy Irish?" He said, "Yeah, I must get in touch with him."
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite places in the world. Is the southern and eastern part of Ireland. I managed to go over there for my honeymoon back in 2010, and I've never forgotten it. And as anybody on our team can tell you, it is my great dream to eventually immigrate over there and become an Irish citizen. So we'll see how that happens.
Fantastic. Come over, come over. I'm in Dublin, but you're absolutely right. South. I have covered kind of north, but I've not fully covered south, Galway and Cork kind of area. They're beautiful. Yeah.
So I will follow up. On my side, guys. I've been in the crypto industry since 7 years now. Basically following all the trends that you've been experiencing. I was DeFi, DeGen 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Been doing a lot of NFTs also. Been a trader, investor, run a few decentralized VCs and investment decentralized fund basically. And right now I'm in charge of everything which is crypto related at Archethic since 4 years now, I believe, something like this.
That's amazing. I have to tell you, I'm going to betray myself a little bit here. I've been following your project for a little more than a year now, and I have to say that I've become a pretty big fan. I like what you guys are doing. I like the approach that you're taking. But what I'm curious about because obviously you're a very unique project. What do you think it was that inspired the creation of Architect as a layer one blockchain generally?
So I'll give you that background story because it was between me and Sebastian, and there were two kind of realizations that we kind of underwent through our journey of decentralization. So we loved the Bitcoin white paper. I absolutely loved it. We thought it was a great concept, and both of us used to discuss it a lot. Ethereum came along the way, and both of us decided that decentralization was the way to go. And strangely, the first thought that came to our mind was to actually not really create layer one, but we decided that for the sake, and Amazon was growing already. There was some amount of surveillance capitalism coming into the whole picture. We felt that there was a need for an open marketplace, right? And I don't know if you guys are aware, in and around that time, a protocol called Open Bazaar was also kind of being talked about, which was essentially a platform, which was a two-sided platform to connect buyers and sellers, right? And the idea was that the real producer of a good or a service should be the ultimate beneficiary of the returns that are coming out of it. So we decided that let's look at Open Bazaar, and let's look at a couple of markets. I was in India, then France, obviously Western Europe, and start developing a platform which connects buyers and sellers. The biggest issue, that was our first realization, was that both of us had worked on a mobile money project just before that. And when you talk of TPS, transactions per second, even in countries not as populous as India, like Africa, some African countries, the transactions during a business hour day would peak at roughly easily, 1 to 200 transactions per second. And if you bring it in the Indian context, that would be just one city in India, right? So if the whole country gets a platform like that, you are talking of probably tens of thousands of TPS. So
Absolutely.
so it was Ethereum was just impossible, and I'm talking 2015. There was hardly any blockchain which could scale at that time. So that was first realization, and Seb is the innovator behind it. He started working in the background, thinking of a protocol that can scale firstly, right? That was one. The second realization brought us to our kind of the second innovation. It was the fact that when we talk to our family about this is great thing, decentralization, it gives back the control and all the good stuff. The problem was that my dad or my granddad it was just impossible for them to even imagine how they can interact with this technology, right? And when I say interact, right from the private key, and how do you save it, and how do you enter the ecosystem itself, is challenging. And it's kind of in let me put it, in a kind of a geek domain, right? It's not for everyone. So the second realization led to us thinking that, can we make it, the access as simple as some kind of a biometric access, so that a person does not have to rack his brains to, where do I keep my private seed phrase, and should I write it down, or God knows what else I can do. So these two things led to first us developing the layer one, because there was nothing in the market that could scale. If we wanted to do something like a marketplace, it was impossible. And the second realization led to us working on the whole finger vein and the biometric technology of how to generate keys out of repeatable biometric information. So these two were kind of the story that led us to this state.
So when you're talking about scalability, can you give me a sense of like the in terms of scale difference between, you said that you originally were looking at Ethereum. What kind of a scale difference are we talking about here in terms of what what your layer one is capable of doing.
So what we did was, see, Ethereum, by the construct, that today we have POS coming up, but the consensus mechanism that Ethereum had at that time, irrespective of number of nodes, the whole network would participate in a consensus, and hence the scale was limited to, let's say, 25 transactions per second. So there was no, think of it that, in our typical centralized architecture also, if you buy a box and you add two boxes, probably your compute will go up at least 1.8, if not double. As you keep adding boxes, your compute keeps going up, maybe not linearly, right? So that is the whole horizontal scalability aspect.
Sure.
So the Ethereum so that part was dead, right? I mean, Ethereum was for us just not going to work. So the scale we were talking of is that, my network should have ability to scale up or down as per need, right? And what that means is that if I have ability to sign on a node, right, into the network, it should bring a like amount of compute with it. So if I have 100 nodes, I can say that I have, let's say about 10,000, let's say 100 into 100 kind of a transactions per second capability. So we were trying to benchmark, and this was very much based on our prior knowledge of deploying telecom mobile money projects, whereby you could expect from a very basic box, you could expect about 50 to 60 TPS, right? So our heads were at that space that, if I have a simple single box with about a 4 CPU kind of a architecture, not very costly server box, it should give me about 50 to 60 TPS. So that was, with that parameter, the Ethereum was just failing for us, right? You add nodes and nothing happens. So we have tried in Archethic to kind of benchmark ourselves to that kind of a throughput, that if I add nodes, I should get a bump up of, and as far as possible, a linear bump up of about 60 to 100 transactions per second.
And you can sustain that scalability at pretty much on into the sunset.
No. So theoretically, yes. We have not been to do it in lab. It takes tremendous amount of compute. So the only way you can do it is you can just keep adding VMs, right, on cloud. So we have not gone to like level of 10,000 nodes or something. But at the level of current level that we have our own nodes. But in the VM, we have gone till, let's say, 100 odd nodes, and it does scale, right? But my experience says that it won't keep linearly scaling uh, as you keep adding, but the architecture of our consensus and the peer-to-peer network is such that it is near linear scalable. I'll not say it's like 100%, and
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So can you give me a sense? I mean, obviously this is going to solve a lot of the scaling problems. And we're talking about big populations, obviously India. I'm sure that as blockchain starts to expand in even more populated areas, that's going to become a greater opportunity for you. But obviously this is going to open up lots of all this stuff is a contact sport in a lot of ways. It's about who you come in contact with, what needs you're trying to fill. So what sort of applications and use cases do you see Architect's technology and your solution best suited for? Like what can we see in the future for the sorts of things that are going to be on the horizon?
Maybe just one point before switching to the applications, actually.
For sure.
Because as you mentioned, like scalability is one of the points, but it was one of the biggest points that everybody was using to differentiate all the layer one. But right now, like the game has changed, let's say, and it's not all about scalability. It's also about other factors that needs to be put into the equation, basically. And I would like to underline a few facts about that is that just to give like Archethic in a nutshell to the community for everybody to have a good understanding of how are we different from other layer ones.
Oh,
You could
yes.
basically just like sequence Archethic into 3 layers. The first one being the P2P network, the infrastructure, the blockchain. The second one being the smart contracts, and the third one being the biometric device. So just how are we different from all the other blockchain infrastructure that you can find on the market? First one is scalability. Of course, as we mentioned and Nilesh said, almost linear scalability with the number of nodes. So you can imagine that if you take the amount of nodes of Ethereum and you translate it into the Archethic network, we would reach basically millions of transactions per second. Second point is the security. If you go on Bitcoin, for example, it's like BFT. It's like you need to own 51% of the network to do something malicious. In our Archethic network, you would need actually to own 90% of malicious nodes to be able to do such kind of things of a malicious attack. And the third point is, yeah, that's basically.
So just let me get you to unpack that a little bit, because that's amazing. So if you have to own over 90% of nodes in order to perpetrate a malicious attack, it sounds to me like this is tailor made for very, very secure data protection. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, that was the point, to make like the network even safer. That's what we do now, because like we had on smaller blockchains, basically, especially at the inception of those blockchains, because it's a weak network, and that's totally normal for them to be weak at the beginning because they've not been bootstrapped and decentralized all over the world, basically. This is like the point that would give the opportunity to malicious attackers to do something. And so one point that Sebastian and Nilesh wanted to put in the forefront of the project is that we needed to be amongst the top security levels to be providing our dApps creators, a level of security which is at least equal to what we can find in centralized systems.
So, and just to add to Victor, and to answer your question, right? What kind of, since it is highly secure and not prone to any malicious attacks, what kind of applications? So when you put scale and security together, it lends itself to some very interesting applications. Okay, and I'll take a couple of examples. One of them is going to be more of a showcase, I'll say, is that could you host websites on a blockchain, right? Now that is going to be a testament of a scale, right? I mean, if you host your website on a, let's say, a blockchain, which is us, Archethic, and pages are served, right, whenever someone tries to reach your website, that is a transaction. And can you do that? If you could do that, that is a kind of a testament to the scale that you can achieve. So that is more like a showcase. The other things that suddenly become easier is with the security part, is something like verifiable credentials, right? So today, I mean, and I'm taking a very umbrella approach here, right? Verifiable credentials is a very overarching statement, but what I'm trying to say is that essentially, can I host a decentralized identity, and then it can be utilized for various business purposes and domains? A simple, we were doing a we are talking about one application where you could essentially be able to verify a person's, let's say, educational credentials, right? Today it is time consuming, right? And it is in a centralized system, who do you trust? So it's not, it's today everyone still has paper degrees and stuff like that. But if you could have a secure decentralized system which is completely controlled by a person's private key, and hopefully very soon a biometric key, then suddenly you have this ability to do verifiable credentials, and that too at scale. So security and scalability. So these are kind of applications which suddenly become possible uh, with Archethic.
That's awesome. So clearly, we're talking very high security, but what I'm trying to understand is okay. You're obviously going to have some. How are you handling scalability and throughput limitations? Because you're talking about there's a linear ability to expand your the capability of the overall chain, but how
So,
can you explain that to me a little?
so maybe I can go first, and Nilesh, I let you complete
Sure.
my answer. So basically, the blockchain trilemma, which is scalability, security, and decentralization, has been around since ever. And what you see in all the other consensus is that whenever you put up the scalability, you might lose a bit of security or decentralization. It's this triangle that if you put one of the three up, you will lose something on the two others or one of the two others. And basically, how can we actually push every one of them up without having to do compromises is because we are not running on any known consensus. We did build our own consensus, which is called Arch, which is actually enabling us to solve the blockchain trilemma. And that's how we are reaching such numbers in terms of scalability, in terms of security, and about decentralization.
So let me add to it. So absolutely, the heart of this solution is Arch consensus. So you were talking about how do we solve the throughput issues, right? So
Exactly.
this Arch consensus. So there are two ways. First, I'll say how do we reach that throughput, and then solve, right? So when we looked at Ethereum, and if I had to, there are different schools of thoughts, but if I had to say, some people consider blockchain as a four-layered protocol, right? And basically, you have the peer-to-peer network, then you have the consensus, then you have DApps, and then user interfaces. So if I look at that architecture, we had to innovate every layer to ensure that we are able to scale with addition of each node. Now, when I say every layer, so let's start with the P2P layer itself. So P2P network, you would be aware, most of the blockchains use some form of gossip. There are others also. Gossip protocol is great, nothing wrong with it. It's simple, but it's chatty. When I say chatty, is like when you're really trying to scale, you want to keep the bandwidth usage uh, at its efficient best. You cannot have a chatty network, and gossip tends to be a chatty because each and every one node is talking to each other. So we used a combination of gossip and something we called supervised multicast, right? So just without getting into technical details, the idea was that at every layer you had to really cut any frivolous stuff and ensure maximum efficiency. So that was your P2P. At next layer, which is your consensus layer, what we have designed is, and what Victor was talking about, uh, the fact is, firstly, the whole network cannot participate in every consensus, and I'm sure many other blockchains have realized that you have, DPoS and various different variants where a small group comes to a consensus, and the small group is representative of the whole network, right? Now, what we did was, there is some literature around something called rotating coordinator consensus. I think it is written by Chandra Tueg, uh, and this is a distributed computing consensus mechanism. We took some inspiration from there, and what we have is a rotating group of uh, validators who validate a transaction. The success of this kind of a consensus depends on random selection, right? And that is where that whole 90% part which Victor mentioned comes in. The selection of who validates a transaction has to be truly random. And for that we used something very, very interesting. This was Sebastian's, and I think we have written in our yellow paper, and it's patented actually, that the incoming transaction will have, every transaction will have some unique identifiers, right, which are not controlled by anyone. You use that incoming transactions entropy to actually select a random group of validators. Now, once you have a truly random group of validators, there is just impossible to find a group which would be 100% malicious, right? So now you're talking of, let's say, for a consensus of 10,000 nodes, maybe 199 validators would be enough to ensure that a network consensus is achieved. So now think about it, that in if you had let's say you have 10,000 nodes and you needed about 199 validators, then you are suddenly able to parallel process transactions, right? Because there can be many such groups. So that is how you achieve parallelism. So it's not going to be sequential, and that is how you achieve a 90% kind of a ability of handling malicious nodes.
Wow, that's really, really innovative. So, I mean, you're using basically, that's fantastic. So you're using both the law of large numbers in essence to, I mean, that's brilliant
Okay.
stuff there. I got to be honest with you. I understand the fundamental stuff of what you're talking about, but the code, once you start getting into that stuff, that's way over my head. I got to be honest. But so that brings me to my next question. So can you explain to me how your governance model works? How are the decisions actually made?
Sure. So governance was another, tricky bit, or something that me, Sebastian, and the team always felt was honestly centralized for most of the cases. When you look at Bitcoin, it kind of errs on the side of miners, right? So honestly, it is not very representative. The governance is honestly miner led, and once you think about it, think of the large pool of miners, then you can figure out that governance would end up being centralized kind of. So for us, first and foremost requirement was that we wanted to ensure that it has to be on chain, right? Everything that is done has to be recorded on chain, proposed on chain, and hence completely auditable, trackable, verifiable, stuff like that. So that was the first aspect. The good part was that we designed this whole system using Erlang Elixir, right? And Erlang provides fantastic fault tolerance and ability to do hot reloads, right? So going to the basics of it, what we are trying to say is, if someone had to propose something, it will be on the blockchain, right? It will be part of a the transaction content part, and it will be voted for or against on the blockchain, and then the related code will be deployed in a testnet, and the results would be available, again everything on the blockchain, right? And then there will be a movement from your testnet to mainnet. So essentially the hot reload capability helps you do that, Erlang Elixir, and the fact that it is on chain makes it very visible. That's one. Now the second important part was that we decided that what kind of voting and are we talking of, right? In the end, it has to be voted in or out, right? Every proposal. So we decided on creating certain groups, right? And as the foundation matures, you will see that there will be specific groups. There will be representative groups for miners, groups for ethics, groups for foundation, groups for users, right? So there will be such 8 entities who will kind of bring to the table the thought of that group. It would just not be miners. So it can't be that, please increase the transaction fee and reduce everything else. So it has to be a inclusive governance model. So the idea was to have these groups have everything on chain, and since it is a very identity driven blockchain, we know that uh, without so it is pseudonymous, but it is identity driven, which means that there is, always one vote per identity, and hence it is difficult to kind of fool the system. So with these kind of aspects, we believe that our governance, the on-chain governance, uh, truly is decentralized, and that kind of is another unique factor. Actually, governance sometimes gets a backseat. No one talks about it, but honestly, there are not many projects I have read which are trying to do truly on-chain governance. There are a few, honestly. It's not that case, but not many.
So if I can back you up just a little bit and get you to unpack that. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're essentially creating, I don't want to say competing sets of groups of groups for governance purposes, but it's really you're setting up different sets of different groups that are driven by various sets of incentives in order as far as what they want to get out of the technology. Am I understanding correctly?
You're absolutely right. And the reason for that
Okay.
is that you need that representation. Otherwise, it will be, this project has to be a project which is a platform for any kind of application. So it can't it has to represent interest of each unique group.
That's really interesting. I mean, I said, yeah, I've been following you guys for quite a long while now, and it just every time I read something about you guys or talk with you guys, I'm constantly impressed by just how much depth of thought you've put into doing everything that you have. So with that in mind, can you go into a little bit about your token? What role does it play within the ecosystem? How does it affect the overall approach that you're taking with your solution?
About the token, it's going to be very simple. Basically, the UCO token is the fuel of the ecosystem. Similarly, as you can see on other layer one, if we take the example of Ethereum, you will use Ethereum to pay transaction fees on the layer one. You can view the UCO in the same way that you can see Ethereum on that model. You will be able to create token, to create NFTs, dApps, etc. But you will always need to pay the basic fee using UCO, which is the native currency of the Archethic network. Then UCO will represent for investors basically the opportunity to own a part of the infrastructure as it is on the other layer one. Yeah, basically we can represent it as simply as that.
Okay, that's perfect. So that brings me right into my next question, which is, so because obviously we're talking about dealing with incentivizing good behavior here. So how does Architect incentivize node operators and validators to actually want to participate in the network?
So the idea, so you're absolutely right. Incentives have to be designed in a way that good behavior is appreciated, right? So what we did was that, I'll answer it in two parts, right? The first one is the incentive itself. So incentive itself is going to be a kind of a daily incentive, right? And which is based on how long are you connected to the network. You have to be you have to be the good Samaritan there. You have to keep your node up and running. So the incentives are based on your being on the network on a daily basis. And the second one is some amount of gamification, right? uh, there have been multiple studies done of how to gamify to ensure that people remain committed onto a network. And honestly, not to demean any industry, but the guys who run casinos have cracked it, right? Once you land there, you don't leave till the time you're shaken out of your reverie.
It's like the
So
land of the lotus eaters, right?
so what we did was we tried to gamify the system and ensure that there are some random rewards also that come out, and that randomization has two elements. One is obviously the regularity needs to be there, but the geo positioning is also one part of that randomization. And what do I mean by that? So idea is that today most of our nodes are clustered around France. There is a cluster in India. There are some in Canada and Latin America. But if I really wanted to promote and have a decentralized network, if let's say a cluster of node came up in Africa, maybe there is a reward, right? And that was another incentive in our mind, that gamify it. And it will be random. So a guy in Peru starts up his machine and gets onto the network and remains there for a couple of days. He may get selected for that random reward, right? So that aspect was to create that buzz. Today it's mostly very known miners, but once we reach that scale, it will become interesting, and a person sitting somewhere will say, okay, that makes sense, let me also get onto the network. Who knows, I might win this lottery, right? So these were the two kind of incentives, daily and the random ones. The second aspect which I wanted to talk about was, how are these incentives kind of given out by the network. So we use a mechanism which is akin to, I'll say, burn mint kind of equilibrium. What I mean by that is that, when a transaction happens at the transaction context level, to keep it very fast and simple validation, we actually burn the transaction fee, right? So transaction happens and the transaction fee is burnt. Now there is a set of chain which is called beacon chains, and which in our case are in a way a summary of a ledger. Now, what happens is, at end of the day, we know how much transaction fee was burnt, and essentially that is the fee which is going to pay to the miners. So it is minted, okay, at the end of the day,
Okay.
and it is minted and paid to the validators who participated. Now, what this means is, and there will be three stages in every network, right? There will be a stage of, kind of a inflation, sorry, equilibrium and deflation. When I say inflation, is maybe initially the transaction fee is not enough to pay the validators, right? Because there are not enough transactions. So that is when the network pays the remaining. And then you will reach a equilibrium stage whereby the transaction fee is enough to pay all the miners. So great. And then there will be a deflation state whereby the transaction fee is more than what the miners require, which means you genuinely are burning the fees. And essentially the network will keep going through these phases of you know inflation, equilibrium, deflation, back to equilibrium, deflation, equilibrium, deflation. So essentially you're ensuring that value of the token for your investors also keeps growing, because it is going to be in the long run, a deflating crypto, and not a inflating crypto. So that was a very interesting thing, that a lot of thought went into it. We we brainstormed. I mean, Victor knows, I mean, this part took a long time, but I believe we have this interesting burn mint equilibrium that we have designed now.
It actually, I think about things mostly from an economics perspective, just because of my own educational background and experience. But it almost sounds like this gives you an extra layer of protection against, for example, what we're dealing with right now, which is the bear market, and it gives you an extra ability to sort of insulate yourself from the vagaries and vacillations of the market. And was that part of what went into your thinking behind this?
So one of the things, right, you're absolutely right. And when I said this burn mint, how we insulate ourselves is the mint that happens, right? It it is a UCO, but it is not immediately becomes a UCO, right? So it is coded in such a way. So in a way, you have insulated the sudden inflation. If the miner has this urge to suddenly pump into the market, he or she can't. But it progressively becomes UCO, right? So it's a interesting burn mint equilibrium, and the whole idea is that it helps keep a balance in the network, so that there is no sudden dumping, because a lot of miners decided to cash out kind of.
Absolutely. So, obviously, I'm a big fan of you guys. I love the innovation you're bringing. The way you're integrating randomness and everything is just really, really unique and novel. I love it. Can you give me a sense of some of the more interesting and similarly innovative projects that are currently being built on Architect, and also how are they using any of these unique novel innovations that you've built into your own project, and if so, how are they using them?
So basically that's three questions in one, but let me
Yeah, sorry
answer.
about that. I know I tend to throw a lot out. My
No,
bad.
no, but we have a lot to say, so that's not an issue. Let me give you 2 points to start with. Basically, let's talk about the partners, the official partners, and the partners which are not official of Archethic that will be launching soon on our chain. Basically, we have people launching metaverses. One guy actually had a partnership, which is an official partnership with the government of Bora Bora. He will be able to digitalize the full set of islands and create an ecosystem, improving the natural protection of the island, and basically the ability to just create alternative economy benefiting the islands in partnership with the government. So that's one. We have then a DEX that obviously will be launching on the mainnet. We have a launchpad, we have bridges, we have guys launching a decentralized gambling on the mainnet, DeFi tracking board, and guys like you leveraging basically the DID part, the biometric part. So that's kind of like the actual partners which are building alongside us and getting ready for when the bridge will be activated. But as you know, it's when you open the gates and every model that you find of a layer one launching, you have many projects launching at once, because once you enable people to just bridge assets as USDT to have a good liquidity, you will have people launching any type of projects. It will be the gold rush, as you can see in Shibarium or in Arbitrum, or like all other like Dogecoin chain, what we've seen lately. You will have tons of projects launching from the community. Will it be shitcoin? Will it be DeFi coin? Will it be even NFTs projects? So that we cannot quantify today, but we are pretty much convinced that we will see the same kind of hype that you can see on other layer one launching because of this model of decentralized creation of value. And
That's awesome.
To refer to the second point that you were mentioning, do those projects come because of the innovation that we enable people to create on our chain? We do believe so, and for some projects, they are definitely leveraging that. For example, you guys, because like one point that we didn't mention earlier is that for people to create dApps on each layer one, you will look at, of course, the language of dApps for like the integration, and basically what can you do on this layer one? What does the language enable you to do to create your product for your users? And what was one of the biggest goals for Sebastian and Nilesh and project was that we wanted that any developer anywhere in the world would be able to code dApps within days. So that's why we created an interpreted language for the smart contracts, which is basically almost similar to if or that you can find in Excel. We wanted to have something very simple, very understandable for any developers which has basic coding knowledge to be able to say, hey, okay, I saw that layer one blockchain. I do not need to learn Rust or Go or Solidity. I can just basically launch my products. And talking about products, we have some features in the smart contracts which basically gives developers the ability to do things that was actually impossible to do on other blockchains. So I'm talking about being able to modify the code of your smart contract after deployment. I'm talking about internal Oracle. Internal Oracle means that you could go and get data outside of the blockchain without using a centralized Oracle, for example. This translates into on-chain DeFi. So, it's those kind of capabilities that we want to promote and to show to the community of developers so they just understand the capabilities of our chain and they bring and create a new generation of services, a new generation of dApps into the ecosystem.
It really sounds a lot, just you describing it that way, it really sounds like you're trying to cater to you're trying to cater to people who may not necessarily have immense amounts of capital backing them up, making it easier for them to on-ramp good ideas. I mean, it really does sound like you're trying to make a blockchain for the people, for lack of a better phrase.
By the people, for the people. We believe usage will be the best driver of growth. And you could see in the blockchain space, it was not always the case. And often that results in a pump and dump scheme, if we can call it this way. We strongly believe that our vision is mass adoption. And in the end, the end user will simply open his phone and use an application and benefit from the service. And would it be Uber of the blockchain, Amazon from the blockchain, whatever it be, basically the end user will never know that in the backend of the application will be blockchain. And this is the kind of objective of goals that we want to reach with mass adoption is make it simple. Simply like just give it the possibility to anybody that doesn't even know the tech to benefit from the services from the tech. And also this was why one of the big whys of the biometric, as Nilesh mentioned earlier, simply have anybody anywhere with no barriers being able to access all the dApps from the blockchain ecosystem without having to know about blockchain.
That's absolutely amazing, and that's one hell of an answer, man. You need to put that up on your blackboard because listen. There's a reason we are very excited to be working with you, and when we hear things like that, that just reinforces the fact that we're on the right track. So in that regard, obviously you guys are looking to expand over the next. You want broad adoption. You want to get a lot of people into the network and into the community. So obviously, I'm sure you guys have some sort of longer range plans as far as how you want to go. How do you see Architect evolving and growing over the next 5 and 10 years? And can you give us any sense of what that's going to look like?
Sure. So the way I see it, the next 5 to 10 years, I mean, with the mainnet launching, you will one of the geographies that will concentrate would be India. The reason being, when we look at our community currently, it is predominantly in the Western Europe region. The reason being that the only way to engage with a project initially is through tokens, right? How do people engage with it? There's nothing to hold or work with, so it's going to be tokens. And India has been in that state where the tokens were illegal, legal, then it's quasi legal. So crypto is not the engaging factor for Indian market. Essentially, it has to be application. Now, with that viewpoint, one of our focus areas, and you will see in coming months, that we'll be doing a lot of marketing focus on India and develop that market. And the story is not going to be token, but the story is going to be application, right? So that's one market. And honestly, I mean, being from India, what I've seen in last decade, what the kind of digitization that has happened in India, I think it is ripe for technologies like ours. It is just set up very well for it. Scale is required, which we bring to the table. So that market is going to be our major focus area. The second part is going to be you know this growth story is going to be inclusive growth story, right? And Victor mentioned that it is for the people to build on. It is going to be the infrastructure project where people can build different kind of things. Idea is that without going into the details of whether Metcalfe's law is the best way to predict the value of a network, but the idea is the more the adoption and interactions on a network, more the value is generated for all the participants, right? So our focus, once we have a stable, our mainnet is out there, bridge is there, our focus is purely going to be adoption, adoption, and adoption. That's it. So you need to onboard projects that add more people and showcase the strength of the strength and the ability of the blockchain to handle scale uh, along with security. So next 5 to 10 years, that is going to be the story. India as one of the core markets to start with. We got a lot of interest from Indonesia, which is again a very interesting and a populous market. So Asia is that focus, starting with India, and obviously onboard more and more dApps that can bring in adoption.
Nilesh, hi, sorry, Dan, to cut. Sorry,
Go ahead,
Dan.
Nikos. It's all yours, brother.
Yeah, I actually I finally made it home, and I've just come in at the point where we're talking about go-to-market strategy, and I was hearing Nilesh talking passionately about going to India. And coincidentally, earlier today, we were defining our own go-to-market strategy, and without going into too much detail, our primary market focus also is India. For so many of the similar reasons that Nilesh has pointed out. Obviously, we have a foothold ourselves in the Indian market, but when you look at a country that boasts the largest demographic of crypto users globally, and it's also seeing such a high growth rate of users and adoption generally, it makes perfect sense that as a community and as a collective of projects that are working within the blockchain and Web3 space, that we do start to look to India and emerging markets that others are traditionally not looking at, because the focus up to now has been European markets and particularly the United States. But when you actually look at the Indian people or the community from a cultural angle, or from that perspective, as a people, they value fundamentally above everything else family, legacy, succession, all of those things that are synonymous with decentralized finance. And with the tools and the methods that we are putting into place, it makes a lot of sense that we really start to turn our attention to this emerging market. If we do want to see mass adoption globally, then we can't close the doors on any one country. But I just think what Nilesh was saying there, I just completely 100% agree. I think it's a great angle and a great way to go about trying to bring a new audience into the Web3 space.
I'm going to add on to that, Nikos, and I agree with you 100%. One of the things that we as in people in this industry, we never really stop to think about is things like demographics. And when you stop and look at demographics, you look at growth trends and things like that. India has the healthiest demographics of any major country on the planet. If compared to China, China's going off of a cliff demographically speaking. India is literally in its stride, or it's in the midst of hitting its stride demographically, and their middle class is exploding in size. The amount of wealth that they have, the amount of innovation and the educational attainment there is just off the charts. And not only that, but I think that India is also finally starting to sort of feel its oats, so to speak, in terms of understanding its place in the global order of things. And you're absolutely right. It is, you ignore India at your peril at this point.
Actually, if you look at the Indian market, and Nilesh will be the best person to speak about it, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically you have a unicorn. Unicorn is a company reaching 1 billion market cap, let's say. You have a unicorn being created or reaching those levels every 2 weeks now, which is something you cannot find anywhere else in the world. That's crazy.
That is just absolutely bonkers to consider the implications of that. That's amazing.
No, very true. I mean, what Victor mentioned is true. The whole idea is uh, when you look at even the GDP aspect, the 2/3 of the GDP is when you consider it, it's local. It's not imported. So the market is self-sustainable. So once you are in this market, you have enough and more, adopters, consumers of your service. So these unicorns are, honestly, they are not even global. They are just in operating in one geography and still are $1 billion valuation. And to Nikos's point, Serenity Shield, I mean, I absolutely, when first time I heard about this whole concept, I just love this. And India is totally, I mean, it is missing everywhere, but this whole legacy part, and the part that how do you ensure that your legacy is preserved, is something extremely important in India. And I actually spoke to a couple of my friends, and I told them, there's one of our partners called Serenity Shield who is doing this in the crypto space. And actually speaking, this is a problem to be solved in the traditional assets also, because it is very difficult to nail down legacy and how it flows. So I think, I hats off. I mean, you guys, if you are going there, we should think of doing some kind of cross promotion in for that market, because we'll also be spending some stuff and going to India. We are thinking of doing a kind of a hackathon, maybe a couple of months down the line, to attract dev community. So maybe yeah, we should join forces.
That would be
There's-
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. The guys know I'm very passionate about cross promotion and cross collaboration with many projects in the space, but it's more and more difficult to find projects that are within your niche that also share your same go-to-market strategy when you're talking about a demographic like India. And having that from both of our teams, and having that foothold and that potential to actually try and tap into that market, it makes sense to do it together and work together to try and bolster and really amplify, I guess, the level of kind of penetration that we can have into that market. So as always, as we do in the background anyway, Nilesh, we stay in touch, our teams. And I think one of the things we start to think about is how we could potentially work together on something like that and really make this a holistic sort of offering for the everyday general user of crypto in the Indian market.
Absolutely, completely agree. I look forward to this.
And
That's awesome.
Just to add on what you just said, Nikos, actually, I agree too. It's all about like selecting the blue chips as partners beyond your ecosystem to create a thriving and bootstrap ecosystem for your community. I mean, what you're doing with the Strongbox the ability to transfer your crypto assets and your data in a decentralized way, and especially the support that you bring with that service. This is like very exciting to us to be working with you guys, because like basically you are sharing the value that we share too about decentralization and especially about mass adoption. So I'm looking forward to what we'll be achieving together in this space.
You know, it's a unique thing to find other projects that share similar or even identical values and ethics when it comes to the way you do business and the way you treat your community. And I have to tell you, it really makes me excited. It gives me a lot of confidence moving forward to see the sorts of things that we've encountered. And I mean, because as I'm sure you guys are very well aware, it's a unique thing, and you have to dig through a lot of garbage to find the gems. And I think that I think that you guys are one of the rare gems out there, and I'm just happy to see that we're working together. So, can I
And
interest you guys to stick around for some questions from the community?
Sure, sure.
let's get
Okay.
cooked.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say it was a great conversation. It was nice to just kind of listen in like a community member. I was getting ready to get going here, and I'm leaving real soon, so can't look up. I'm really looking forward to ETH Denver. I'm looking forward to this collaboration and re-listening to this space because it was some good stuff and really tech intensive, which I prefer. It's really down my tea. So I'm looking forward to it. Dan, I'll see you in Denver, and everyone else. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you guys, and take care and keep going on with the conversation. Take care, everyone.
Have a safe flight, man.
Thank you.
Take care. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, Haas and I literally live on opposite sides of the same city. He lives about 10 miles to the west of me, so it's pretty funny. So anyway, I'd like to open up the floor to people. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'm happy to call on you, and don't be shy. And in the meantime, if you guys have anything that you would like to, something that we haven't covered yet, if there's something that you feel like you wanna bring up, by all means, go right ahead.
I think we had quite a good
Good.
overview about the project. Then we can always, deep dive in every layer of the project. As you mentioned, it's quite deep in terms of tech and in terms of use cases. But I think it gives a good first impression and first overall view for the community and the people discovering the project to start with.
Absolutely. I think you guys did a really good job of explaining everything. I know Haas enjoys the more technical type of discussion, and there's definitely a time and a place for that. But what I found really interesting is the way that you guys explain everything. Yes, there's some technical knowledge that's necessary in order to understand it. But even if you don't have that, you can still follow it, and you understand the overall concept driving what you guys are doing, and the reasons you make the decisions that you make. And I think that's really important for the community to understand, because it gives the community some insight into what they're actually getting involved with. And I think that that's incredibly critical, because a lot of times in this environment, uh, it's almost like, if you'll pardon the phrase, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, you baffle them with bullshit. And a lot of times I think that companies try to hide behind technological, deeply technical explanations of things, and they don't know how to break it down to brass tacks and communicate in a way that the layman can understand. And I think that both of you have done a hell of a job in being able to craft your message and craft your explanations in such a way that people can really get it on the first try. And I thank you for that, because it is rare, and it's a welcome change when you get a chance to see it. So thank you for that.
Thanks a lot. I mean, it was a very engaging conversation, honestly. So I think it is conversation is always a two-way street. So somehow, yeah, the whole mechanism and the whole setup was such that, yeah, it brings the best.
Absolutely. Oh, we have one request. Okay, who do we have here? Ruben Metcalf. I just brought you up. Ruben, can you hear us?
I can now. How we doing?
Awesome. Great. How are you, man?
I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10, give or take. Yeah,
That's good. Better than even.
that's what I'm saying. Hey, so I had some questions. I have a million questions, but we'll start with one. The context here is I'm one of those sort of jaded dudes at the back of the crypto conference who forgot to hodl, but I've been sort of floating around since about 2009. And I really like what's happening with DIDs in general. I've sort of been following it since about 2016, on its way through the WWW consortium. Sorry, WT3 consortium. I'm wondering, we're starting to see interests from Google, from Mozilla, from Microsoft, in terms of getting involved with standards, and of course standards only happen by adoption, but I'm wondering, are you feeling any pressure from, how are you sort of, how would you describe the landscape of DID infrastructure, where it stands today, and where it might be going? Because my thesis right now is that there's a lot of folks that are trying to really be the home of the DID, because if you can get it's kind of like the social security number, right? Like if you can get the DID on your chain, then there's so much stuff that's built on top of that it's kind of like getting the customer at the grassroots, right? Super low level. Do you see a culture of collaboration in and around DIDs, or are you seeing behavioral approaches from the various layer ones, from the various sort of powerful proprietary platforms that are looking to sort of sequester DIDs in terms of like custom implementations and trying to sort of keep it home? Or do you like, how would you sort of, if you had to sort of sum up where things are at in terms of the competitive landscape versus the collaborative landscape, where do you think we are right now?
Yeah. So let me answer it in two parts. The first part would be about the existing players, right? And you're absolutely right about Google's and the GAFAM of the world, or PAMGA as it's called some places. Everyone is trying to get a piece of that DID pie. Honestly, and I'm coming purely from an architectural perspective, when you have built an architecture which is so centralized at every level, that even if you say you are going to sequester the DID, honestly, is it going to be really DID? I mean, my question is, because it can't be. I mean, you cannot. You may do a lip service to it, okay, but in its purest form, you will not be able to, create a decentralized identity platform without being truly decentralized. So that's my view on at least the traditional players. They will try to sequester, but that will be a folly, because the fact is that if the DID and W3C put its first standard, now it's a well-defined standard, and we follow in our blockchain. We have actually utilized the tenets of DID, W3C DID standard. Now, the idea is that at I believe it will be kind of a collaborative space when you look at the Web3 companies. I don't think it will be, winner takes it all or try to sequester, because by the nature it has to be decentralized, right? So I know multiple projects who are doing something in the DID space, as old as a blockchain called Sovereign. I'm sure you might have heard. They were doing identity a long time back, trying to do some use cases with it. Then there were multiple others, and we have our own construct of DID. I think it will be collaborative in my mind. I would not go the way of the centralized platforms, because I would not believe that they can suddenly produce architecture which is decentralized. But other than that, I think it will be collaborative for us also. Just to give you a point, if when I talk briefly about verifiable credentials, right? The space is humongous, right? uh, yes, if you are able to just think of it, that if I launch in India and I'm just able to even sequester the DID for India as a geography, it is just humongous. So the space is very, very, very big, and applications are multiple, right from education to jobs to so many applications to a decentralized identity, right? So collaboration would be the way to go, and I have not seen fierce competition in that kind of a area. I don't know whether, I hope that answers your question to a certain extent.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, in some ways, it's like DIDs are kind of like DNS for humans or for assets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a very good explanation. Absolutely.
Second question, unless we get some other folks up on stage and cut me off if we need to wrap up. What about nation state adoption? Do you see nation states pushing back, right? Because, I mean, what we're really talking about, I try not to say the phrase at the end of the day in sentences is sort of overused. But what we're really talking about is sort of ledgers, right? Or registrars or registries. And so if you think of the DMV as the place that sort of has your license number in America, or the Inland Revenue Corporation, department back in my home country of New Zealand, they sort of keep your tax ID number. It's just a ledger on a private server, right? Or well, technically a public server. Do you see any movements from nation states to adopt maybe not the actual ledger itself, but even just the standards for DIDs, incorporating that into the infrastructure in pursuit of alignment and interoperability in the future? Or do you think it's going to be kicking and screaming?
I can take examples of from India, because I know that space, and I have talked to the architects who created the biometric identity of India. Today, it is world's largest biometric identity. We have 1.1 billion biometric identity, folks with that. So interestingly, in India, they'll not be kicking, but they will be collaborating, because in India, with the scale that we have, the government agencies which are managing such large platforms, they believe in creating that platform or ecosystem, and they would rather have different players providing their services. And a very classic example is when we are talking of unicorns, just a moment back, many of those unicorns in India have come in fintech space. And the reason for that is the network that India created called UPI, right? So India has its own payment network today. But again, this was an ecosystem play. Everyone could participate and benefit. So in India, I see it. I mean, because I have spoken to someone about it and the whole verifiable credentials aspect. Yeah, absolutely. It is. People can participate. I'm not so sure whether it will be true for every country, because it depends. So honestly, wouldn't be very sure whether some might kick it, some may adopt.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's probably going to be a while before we get the CCP on board. Okay, and then last question. Privacy. If we truly want sort of sovereign privacy, it seems to me like we really sort of have to get it down at the lowest level possible, right? I'm not sure if we're going to get it down to the device level, but perhaps having it so that one can sort of put ZK proofs inside variables, right? So that if I have let's say I have an NFT that represents, an hour of labor, for example, that I'm selling to somebody who wants to buy my time as a lawnmower. Or actually, better yet, as a family attorney, right? Now, I want people to know that I've been a family attorney, but I don't want them to know who I was a family attorney for. So I want them to be able to see, yes, there's like a history of record. This person has been out and about. They've made transactions. There are sort of responses to that, so on and so forth. But I should be able to declare who I was working with, having that on the history of record, but be able to hash it in such a manner so that only somebody who has the relevant key can sort of unlock the specific history of record, or maybe it has like a time lapse before that goes public, that kind of thing. Are you seeing any movements from the various L1 and L2s to sort of bring back sort of various variable specific hashes so we can get sort of composable privacy down to the variable level, or is how are you seeing people navigate that, where you want some stuff to be public, but you don't want everything to be public?
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly, maybe we didn't touch upon it during our talk of identity also. We actually have that ability. So for me, identity has multiple access, right? So you have, as you correctly mentioned, you may want to share certain data and not want to share certain other data. So we have created a hierarchy in our system, and created those various variables at identity level. I mean, we have not tried to define it ourselves. There will be key values, right? And now you have a hierarchy whereby you have ability to share specific stuff with a specific agency. So if my medical history doesn't need to be shared with a educational institute and vice versa. I mean, I'm just taking a high level example. So the ability to obfuscate certain information uh, is highly critical. So what you're saying is required. I don't know whether other L1s are doing it, but that was one of the things which was very important. And the way we control it is, think of it like a three-party model. The network is in between. I am the person who needs to be identified, and someone is a verifier, right? So it's like literally the public-private key, the standard mechanism whereby only a person who has authority can unlock and see that, and I am the one who gives that person that authority. So we have tried to do that in our design. Not sure about others, but I think in DID that is one of the very, very important aspects. Otherwise, it's like open season, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think if we want to build something that's sort of not just sort of specific use cases on, for specific applications use, but we want to build something for developers without too much thinky pain. We really want to sort of get that as low in the code base as possible, right? So sort of de facto privacy with maybe like a toggle, in the actual code itself when somebody's making declarations. It seems to me like a responsible way to do it rather than going the other way. Hey, thanks for your time. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Ruben. That was fantastic. That was some really interesting stuff. One last, I'd love to sit here and talk with these guys all day long, but I know that they have a busy day ahead of them, or night in some cases. One last call for questions, and then we're going to probably wrap it up because we want to make sure that we respect their time. Okay. Well, since no one is stepping up, I think that is probably going to bring us to an end. Gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure this afternoon. I was very excited to be able to get a chance to talk with you guys, and I'm really, really excited about the things that we're going to be doing together moving forward. So thank you once again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for hosting us. It was a pleasure to be on your channel.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, guys.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.